What's up everyone, Junior Farr, ex-professional boxer, fight analyst. Today we're going to be talking about Joseph Parker and what's next for him. Joseph Parker, the forgotten child of boxing it seems. The guy who deserves to be next, the guy who deserves a shot, has proven himself time and time again, but for some reason always continues to get the short end of the stick. What is going on, man? So Joseph Parker just recently went on their talk show and done an interview talking about what's next for him. And there's some points that he brought up which I didn't want to bring up myself. I have a page. I'm a New Zealander. I'm a Kiwi. I'm a Pacific Islander. I talk about boxing. It's hard not to talk about Joseph Parker, especially with our two careers being so interlinked in the amateurs. And so now that I've left boxing and he's carrying on and he's destroying it up there, I wanted to talk about the whole predicament that he's in, but it would sound very weird coming from me because what I'm about to say sounds like I'm not rooting for him. But I am. It's just that I understand the business, and he brought it up himself. He says, which is what I think as well, he thinks that he's probably not going to be next, and that's what I believed as well. I believe he's probably not going to be next for Alexander Usyk. And as tough as it is to say that, I think both of us understand. I don't think he's what Usyk is after. He says, I think Usyk is after bigger fights. Joseph Parker has worked himself up to the number one contender spot for the undisputed title, which, let's be frank, Frank warn't Frank. Let's be clear, it should have been him fighting for the titles on, when was it, Saturday, Sunday? Or Sunday for us here in New Zealand. It should have been him in there. Obviously, he didn't get to fight for the title because the title holder got sick, that being Daniel Dubois, and he had to pull out. Joseph Parker fought, but he didn't get to fight for the belt, which means, obviously, he doesn't get to fight Alexander Usyk because Alexander Usyk is after undisputed. He's after big fights. And that's where Joseph Parker is left. Joseph Parker is left in a spot where he should be next, but he's not a big, well, he's a big fight, but you have bigger fights available for Usyk. You have boxing in UK. That's where boxing is right now. Boxing is in England. Boxing is in the United Kingdom. That's the biggest fan base for boxing right now, especially for heavyweights. And they love Usyk. And Usyk will be able to sell, but he needs a partner in that to sell, and that needs to be a UK fighter. Joseph Parker, as much as they love him, he's not a UK fighter. And there's a bit of like uncertainty if that can sell in the UK. I think it'll be fine, but pretty understandable why promoters would be a bit wary and why Usyk would be a bit wary facing Joseph Parker, or selecting Joseph Parker to fight for the undisputed title in the UK, because it has to be in the UK, right? That's where the biggest numbers are gonna sell. And if you're going into your last couple fights, you want those fights to be big numbers, a lot of zeros on the paycheck, and you want to retire having no worries for yourself, your kids, and for your many generations after you. Is getting the most, is squeezing as much as he can from the lemon, being boxing. So, a realistic question, what is next for Joseph Parker? Joseph Parker mentioned that he thinks, or Alexander has a few days to decide if he's going to keep the WBO belt, because that's the belt that is next for his mandatory. WBO has ordered Alexander Usyk fight his mandatory, that mandatory being Joseph Parker. And Joseph Parker thinks that Alexander Usyk is going to vacate the title, which leaves him fighting someone else for the title. Guess who's ranked just below Joseph Parker in WBO? Moses Atama. If Moses Atama goes through Dillian White in the next couple of weeks, which we'll see, and which I think will most probably happen, I think he's going to beat Dillian White. I don't know how it's going to look. Very unsure. I don't know what type of form Dillian White will come in for the fight. We all know how sharp Moses is. We don't know how far he can go. But judging from what everyone says about him, and these aren't just like anybody. These are all top heavyweights are talking about this kid because he sparred everyone. They know the talent that Moses Atama is and what he brings to the table, and they're all saying that he's next. Like he's like the next guy in boxing. He's that next generation. He's just coming at a time now, especially at the tender age of 20, bro. At 20, heck, being that much of a monster at 20, crazy. Moses Atama and Joseph Parker could be next. That could happen. They were also talking about Joseph Parker versus Anthony Joshua. That's another fight that really could do some numbers because there's a lot of interest there. Joshua just has the X factor about him where people are drawn to him and will watch him. He still sells massive numbers wherever he goes. So Joseph Parker versus Anthony Joshua could be next. I put my money on that being next. I think Joseph Parker versus Anthony Joshua will be next. I think Parker is right where he's saying that that Usyk will relinquish the belt. I think so because you then have an opportunity to go in and fight for undisputed for the fourth time. 4 times undisputed. That could happen, man. So he could relinquish the belt. It could be Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker. Because both of these guys are still like sitting around, waiting around, wondering what's going on. And that's a true story, by the way, because Alexander Usyk just fought. He hasn't decided if he's going to keep the belt or relinquish the belt. Both of these guys are sitting on the sideline. Usually in boxing, we know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? The public don't know, but the fighters know what's going on, and this fight's going to happen. It's going to happen on this date, and then stuff's going to be released maybe in the next few weeks. Not this time. I think this time we are honestly waiting to see what Alexander Usyk's going to do. Joseph Parker's right. I think he is going to relinquish the belt. I think Usyk is going to relinquish the WBO belt and let Joseph Parker fight someone else for that belt and then fight the winner of that. And I think Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker is a big fight. Even though Moses Atama is ranked up there, I feel like he still needs to wait his turn, you know what I mean? It's like, dude, you're friggin' 20, bro. You got ages to go. So it will be interesting to see what happens in these next few days because very soon we're going to get an announcement from Usyk and then something will be released for Joseph Parker. That's what's going to be next. They're also talking about Kabayel versus Joseph Parker. Is that a possibility where we find Joseph Parker versus Agit Kabayel, the two that should be fighting Usyk? You know what I mean? So you have Joseph Parker waiting, you have Agit Kabayel waiting. Both of them have proven themselves. Agit Kabayel, his last few performances have been amazing. He's destroyed his last 3 opponents. He beat that Russian monster Makhmudov, Aslanbek Makhmudov, body shots. He beat the Cuban Flash, Frank Sanchez, the guy that beat me up. No, which is quite funny because I also beat Makhmudov in the amateurs, but Agit Kabayel knocked him out, like smashed his body. And then you have Frank Sanchez. Frank Sanchez beat me up, but Agit Kabayel beat him up too, smashed him to the body. And then you have Zhilei Zhang. He put up a good fight against Joseph Parker. That was a very good fight, by the way. Joseph Parker and Zhilei Zhang was a very good fight. Zhilei Zhang put on a great performance. He just got outworked from Joseph Parker. But Agit Kabayel beat up Zhilei Zhang and dropped him and kept on dropping him, and the fight got stopped early on, like what, round 5, I believe, or something. So Agit Kabayel has stopped all these guys from body shots, and he's undefeated. He's just not as well known as Joseph Parker because he hasn't really been promoted so well. But he's another threat to Usyk. I think his style is a very difficult style to deal with. So I definitely want to see Agit Kabayel facing someone else in the future. It will be interesting to see who's going to be fighting Usyk next. Will it be Agit Kabayel? Will it be Joseph Parker? For myself, I don't know if it's going to be any of those two because of what I said earlier. Usyk is he is at the end of his career. He's going to want to have big paydays. They're going to have to be someone in the UK. I think that's what he wants, but realistically, he can't get that. So it has to be either Joseph Parker, or Agit Kabayel. Or if those two fight each other, then you get the winner of those. And then, if you beat them, 4 times undisputed, retire. You know what I mean? That could be cool. That could be what's next for Alexander Usyk. It will be very interesting to see what happens in the next few days, and I'll be keeping you guys updated. Once again, my name is Junior Farr, ex-professional boxer, fight analyst. See you guys next time.